The Awakening. The hiss of escaping cryogenic gases filled the vast chamber as Professor Marcus Chen's pod slowly opened. His eyes, still sharp despite his 70 years, adjusted to the soft blue light filtering through the crystalline dome above. The last thing he remembered was the solemn face of his granddaughter as she initiated the preservation sequence. That had been 50,000 years ago. Marcus pushed himself up, his muscles responding better than expected thanks to the neural stimulation program that had kept his body from completely atrophying. Around him, other pods were beginning their wake sequences, their occupants still wrapped in the ethereal mist of suspended animation. Unlike the countless other preservation attempts humanity had made in its final days, Project Legacy had succeeded. The chamber itself was a testament to engineering brilliance, a perfect hemisphere carved into the bedrock of this alien world, its walls lined with thousands of cryogenic units, but Marcus knew they weren't all full. Only 50 pods contained occupants, each housing one of Earth's greatest minds. They were the culmination of humanity's last desperate gamble. Professor Chen, a familiar voice called out, "It seems we both made it." Dr. Sarah Patel, Earth's leading quantum physicist, was already standing beside her pod, her silver hair catching the blue light. At 82, she had been the oldest volunteer for the project. Though I must admit, I had my doubts about the long-term stability of the quantum field generators. Marcus smiled, remembering their heated debates during the project's development phase. "Your doubts were always what made the technology better, Sarah." He took a tentative step forward. Then another, his body remembering its old rhythms. "Have you seen any of the others?" Before she could answer, more pods began their wake sequence. The chamber filled with the software of machinery as Earth's final council of elders returned to consciousness. Each member had been chosen not just for their expertise, but for their age and experience. In humanity's darkest hour, they had realized that raw intelligence wasn't enough. They needed the wisdom that only decades of life could provide. Dr. James Morrison, the climate systems specialist, emerged next, followed by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, whose work in xenobiology had revolutionized humanity's understanding of alien life. One by one, the brightest minds of the 21st century awakened to find themselves in the 521st. The facility's automated systems appear to be functioning perfectly, observed Dr. Lu Wei, running his hands over a nearby control panel. As the architect of the facility's maintenance systems, his relief was palpable. Environmental controls, power generation, even the quantum field stabilizers. Everything's operating within expected parameters. But Marcus wasn't listening. His attention had been caught by something through the dome above. A massive gas giant hanging in the alien sky, its rings casting spectacular shadows across the landscape. This wasn't the same planet where they'd built the facility. The entire chamber had been moved. "We're not on Kepler 186 anymore," he announced to the gathering group. Someone, or something, relocated the entire facility. The revelation sent a ripple of murmurs through the assembled scientists. They had chosen Kepler 186 for its stability and isolation. Moving the facility would have required technology far beyond what humanity possessed even in its final days. Dr. Rodriguez moved to one of the facility's main terminals, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. According to the facility's logs, the relocation occurred approximately 5,000 years after our preservation began. The entire chamber was transported through something the computer refers to as a dimensional fold. "That's impossible," Dr. Patil interjected, but her voice carried more curiosity than skepticism. "The energy requirements alone would be—" She was interrupted by a deep rumbling that shook the entire chamber. The blue light flickered, then stabilized. Above them, through the crystalline dome, they watched as massive structures began to rise from the desert floor, gleaming towers of an alien metal that seemed to drink in the light of the gas giant above. "It appears our hosts are ready to make themselves known," Marcus said quietly. He had hoped for more time to gather their bearings, to understand their situation, but 50,000 years was long enough to wait. Dr. Morrison, Dr. Rodriguez, begin environmental analysis. Dr. Liu, Dr. Patel, I want full diagnostics on every system in this facility. The rest of you, prepare for first contact protocols. As the group dispersed to their tasks, Marcus remained standing in the center of the chamber, his eyes fixed on the rising structures outside. They hadn't been preserved just to witness humanity's legacy. They were here to ensure its future. And whatever intelligence had preserved them through the millennia clearly had plans of its own. From his pocket, he withdrew a small holographic projector, his last gift from his granddaughter. When activated, it displayed a simple message. Remember why we chose you. It wasn't your knowledge we needed to preserve. It was your wisdom. Marcus closed his fingers around the projector, feeling its warmth against his palm. We remember, he whispered, and we're ready. The ancient archive. The alien towers had finished their emergence, standing like crystalline sentinels against the purple-tinged sky. But Professor Marcus Chen's attention was focused underground, where Dr. Liu Wei had made a startling discovery beneath the cryogenic chamber. It's some kind of data core, Liu explained, leading the group through a spiraling corridor that seemed to phase between solid and translucent states. But its architecture, it's unlike anything we developed on Earth. The corridor opened into a vast spherical chamber that drew collective gasps from the assembled scientists. Countless streams of light flowed through the air in complex patterns, each beam carrying what appeared to be fragments of human history, art, and knowledge. Dr. Sarah Patel reached out to touch one of the streams, and a holographic display materialized, showing the complete works of Earth's greatest composers. It's not just scientific data, she whispered. They preserved everything. Not they, Dr. Elena Rodriguez corrected, studying readings on her portable scanner. We did this. Look at the base code structure. It's human in origin, but it's been enhanced, evolved over millennia of autonomous operation. Marcus moved to the center of the chamber where a central pillar of light pulsed with a steady rhythm. As he approached, the light responded, expanding to form a familiar face, his granddaughter, Maya, now 50,000 years in the past. Hello, grandfather, the hologram spoke, its voice carrying the same determination he remembered from their last goodbye. If you're seeing this, then Project Legacy succeeded beyond our wildest hopes. But there's something you need to know about why we really sent you forward in time. The hologram flickered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images of Earth's final days. But these weren't the catastrophic scenes they remembered. Instead, they showed humanity achieving what had seemed impossible, stabilizing the climate, ending resource conflicts, reaching a level of technological advancement that bordered on miraculous. We didn't send you to the future because we failed, Maya's voice continued. We sent you because we succeeded too well. Humanity evolved. Grandfather, we merged with our technology, expanded beyond our biological limitations. But in doing so, we began to lose something precious, the wisdom that can only come from living a full mortal life. Dr. James Morrison stepped forward, his weathered face reflecting the shifting lights. They transcended, he said quietly. The younger generations, they became something beyond human. Maya's hologram nodded. The rest of humanity left this galaxy, seeking challenges worthy of what we'd become. But some of us remembered what we were losing. We couldn't preserve the experience of age, the wisdom of mortality, the perspective that only comes from watching civilizations rise and fall within a single lifetime. That's why we created Project Legacy. The streams of data around them intensified, revealing the true scope of their preservation. They hadn't just been kept in suspended animation. They had been carefully maintained, their minds periodically activated in controlled dreams to process and integrate new information while their bodies rested. Dr. Patel's fingers danced through the data streams, her eyes wide with understanding. The quantum field generators. They weren't just maintaining our bodies. They were preserving our consciousness patterns, keeping our minds from being altered by the preservation process. But why move us? Marcus asked the hologram of his granddaughter. Why relocate the entire facility to this world? The answer came not from Maya's hologram, but from a new presence in the chamber. A door that hadn't existed moments before simply appeared, and through it stepped a being that seemed to be made of living light. Because we asked them to, the being said, its voice resonating not through the air, but directly in their minds. We are the keepers, and we have maintained your sanctuary for 45,000 years, waiting for the moment when you would be needed. Marcus felt a lifetime of scientific training wrestling with the wonder before him. The being's form suggested technology far beyond even what humanity had achieved before its transcendence, yet there was something almost humble in its presence. Needed for what? Dr. Rodriguez asked, her xenobiologist's curiosity overtaking her initial shock. The keeper's form shifted, creating a display of the local galaxy cluster. To teach us how to die, it said simply. And in doing so, to help us remember how to truly live. The chamber fell silent as the implications of those words sank in. They had expected to wake to a future that needed their knowledge, their scientific expertise. Instead, they had awakened to find that their most valuable asset was something far more fundamental: their mortality, their humanity, their understanding of life's precious impermanence. Maya's hologram smiled one last time before fading. You were chosen because you understand something that we lost, something that the keepers never had. You understand that it's the finite nature of life that gives it meaning. Marcus looked around at his fellow scientists, seeing in their aged faces the same mix of wonder and determination he felt. They had been preserved not despite their age, but because of it. Their wrinkles, their gray hair, their mortal bodies, these weren't limitations to be transcended, but rather the very tools needed for the task ahead. The keeper extended a tendril of light toward them. Will you teach us? Marcus straightened his back, feeling the weight of not just 50,000 years, but of all human wisdom in his response. We will, he said. But first, you need to tell us everything. And as the being of light began its tale, the ancient archive around them pulsed with the combined knowledge of two civilizations, waiting to be understood not just with the mind, but with the heart and soul of human experience. The Keepers. The Keeper's tale unfolded like a tapestry of light, its memories projecting across the archive chamber in cascading waves of energy. Professor Marcus Chen and his colleagues watched as the history of an ancient race materialized before them. We emerged from pure energy, the Keeper explained, its form rippling with remembered frequencies. Unlike your species, we never knew biological evolution. We simply were. The chamber filled with images of beings of pure light, dancing through the cosmos like living stars. Dr. Elena Rodriguez leaned forward, her xenobiologist's instincts fully engaged. You're saying your species began as conscious energy. That defies everything we understand about the evolution of intelligence. And yet here we stand. The Keeper responded, a note of what might have been amusement in its resonating thoughts. We mastered the physical universe. We learned to fold space, to harvest the energy of dying stars, to create and destroy matter at will. But we never learned how to end. The images shifted, showing vast networks of energy beings spreading across galaxies, building structures that dwarfed solar systems. But there was something mechanical about their movements, a pattern that repeated endlessly without variation. Dr. Sarah Patel's eyes narrowed. You're trapped in a loop, she said softly. Without mortality, without the pressure of limited time, you've lost the drive to truly change or grow. Precisely. The Keeper's form condensed, becoming more humanoid. We watched your species with fascination. You lived such brief, fragile lives, yet in those fleeting moments, you created art that moved us, music that made us question our existence, stories that showed us possibilities we had never imagined. Dr. James Morrison, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. That's why you preserved the facility. You're not just interested in our knowledge. You want to understand how our mortality shapes our creativity, our drive to leave something behind. The chamber's light shifted again, revealing countless failed attempts by the keepers to replicate human art and innovation. Their creations were technically perfect, but lacked the spark of inspiration that came from living with the knowledge of death. When your descendants achieved transcendence and left this galaxy, the keeper continued, we feared that the last repository of this wisdom would be lost forever. But they understood what they were leaving behind. They entrusted you to us, knowing that one day we would need what only you could teach. Marcus stepped forward, placing his hand against the keeper's luminescent form. To his surprise, he felt warmth and something more, a longing so deep it transcended the barriers between their species. Show us, he said simply. Show us what's really threatening you. The keeper's form expanded, and suddenly, the chamber was filled with a vision of impending doom. A wave of pure entropy was approaching, a phenomenon that even the keeper's mastery of energy couldn't counter. It was the ultimate expression of the universe's mortality, the heat death that would eventually claim everything. We can see it coming, the keeper explained, but we don't know how to face it. We have never had to confront our own end. We need to learn how to die with grace. Dr. Lu Wei finished, his voice gentle, and how to make your remaining time matter. The assembled scientists exchanged glances. They had awakened expecting to find a future that needed their scientific knowledge. Instead, they had found a species that needed something far more fundamental, the wisdom that came from living with the knowledge of mortality. But we're not just here to teach you how to die, Marcus said, understanding flowing through him like an electric current. We're here to show you how to truly live first. The human experience isn't just about accepting death. It's about finding meaning in the face of it. The keeper's form brightened. Then you will help us. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her face set with determination. We'll do more than that. We'll help you evolve. But first, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. That entropy wave. How long do we have? By your measurements, approximately 1,000 years. A millennium, Marcus mused, a smile crossing his weathered face. Time enough to teach a species of immortals how to embrace their mortality. Time enough to share the greatest lesson humanity ever learned, that it's not about how long you exist, but what you do with the time you have. The keeper's form pulsed with what might have been hope. Around them, the archive chamber hummed with the combined knowledge of two civilizations, one that had mastered the physical universe but lost its way, and another that had found profound meaning in its very limitations. As the human scientists began to organize their unprecedented task, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at the irony. They had been preserved through 50,000 years of time not to save humanity, but to save beings who had never known what it meant to be human. And in doing so, perhaps they would preserve something even more precious, the wisdom that came from embracing life's beautiful impermanence. The test. 1 year had passed since the awakening. The crystalline towers that housed the keepers now pulsed with new rhythms, patterns that reflected the influence of human creativity. Professor Marcus Chen stood at a viewing platform, watching as a keeper attempted something unprecedented in their species' history, creating art. The being of light twisted and reformed itself, trying to capture not just the image of the gas giant above, but the feeling it evoked. The result was imperfect, asymmetrical, and completely revolutionary for a species that had only known mathematical precision. They're learning, Dr. Sarah Paddle said, joining Marcus at the window. But time is running out. She was right. The entropy wave was no longer just a distant threat. Their instruments could detect its approach now, a mounting pressure against the fabric of space-time itself. While the keepers had mastered incredible technologies, they had never faced a challenge they couldn't solve with pure power and precision. Professor Chen. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communication system. You need to see this immediately. Minutes later, the core human team had gathered in what they now called the Nexus, a chamber where keeper technology merged with human intuition. Dr. Rodriguez's holographic displays showed a simulation of the approaching entropy wave, But something was different. It's not just a natural phenomenon, she explained, her eyes bright with discovery. Look at these patterns. The wave is being guided, shaped by something with intelligence. Dr. James Morrison leaned closer to the display. Are you saying something is weaponizing entropy itself? Not something. A keeper emerged from a wall, its light dimmer than usual. Someone. We have a confession to make. The being's form flickered with what the humans had learned to recognize as shame. The entropy wave is our doing. Or rather, it is the doing of those among us who believe that existence itself has become meaningless without end. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Marcus felt a chill run through him as he understood. They're trying to force an ending. Yes, the keeper confirmed. A faction of our kind believes that since we cannot find meaning in mortality, we should impose it upon the universe itself. They have spent millennia developing this weapon, a cascade of artificial entropy that will bring about a premature heat death. Dr. Lu Wei, who had been quietly analyzing the data, spoke up. But you can't just stop existing. Your kind arose from energy itself. Even a heat death wouldn't truly end you. No, the keeper agreed. It would trap us in an eternal state of near nothingness. Not death, but an endless twilight of half-existence. They believe this is preferable to continuing as we are. Marcus paced the chamber, his mind racing. This is why you really needed us. Not just to teach you about mortality, but to help you find a reason to keep existing. The keeper's form brightened slightly. Yes, but we are running out of time. The wave will reach us in less than a month, and our attempts to counter it with pure force have failed. We need, what is your word for it? Innovation, creativity, the ability to see solutions where logic says there should be none. Dr. Patel had been working at a console, running calculations. The wave's structure is unlike anything we've seen before. It's not just destroying energy. It's converting it into a state of permanent dormancy. But if we could reverse the process. Impossible, the keeper stated. We have tried every permutation off. That's your problem right there, Marcus interrupted, a smile spreading across his face. You've tried every logical solution, but the human mind doesn't work on logic alone. We dream, we imagine, we make impossible leaps. He turned to his colleagues. Dr. Patel, you wrote a theory about quantum consciousness back on Earth. Dr. Rodriguez, your work on energy-matter conversion broke every rule we thought we understood. Dr. Morrison, your climate models proved that chaos could be directed. And Dr. Liu, you designed systems that could repair themselves in ways their original creators never imagined. Understanding dawned on their faces. They had spent a year teaching the keepers about human art, emotion, and acceptance of mortality. But perhaps the greatest human trait was the ability to look at certain doom and still imagine a way out. We've been teaching them the wrong lesson, Marcus continued. It's not just about accepting mortality. It's about fighting for life even when death seems certain. It's about finding hope in hopeless situations. That's the real test. The chamber erupted into activity. Scientists who had been preserved for 50,000 years began applying their knowledge in ways they had never imagined. They weren't just fighting to save an alien species now. They were fighting to preserve the very concept of meaningful existence. As Marcus watched his colleagues work, integrating human intuition with keeper technology, he remembered his granddaughter's final message. She had said they were chosen for their wisdom, but perhaps it was more than that. Perhaps they were chosen because humanity, in all its brief, fragile existence, had never learned to simply accept what seemed impossible. The entropy wave approached, but in that chamber, human creativity blazed brighter than even the keeper's light. They had 1 month to save not just a species, but the very meaning of existence itself. Legacy of Two Worlds. The entropy wave loomed on the horizon like a curtain of darkness, consuming the stars themselves. In the Nexus chamber, Professor Marcus Chen watched as 50,000 years of human wisdom merged with the Keeper's ancient power. The quantum resonance is stable, Dr. Sarah Patil announced, her hands dancing through holographic controls. Energy conversion at 90% efficiency. Around them, keepers phased in and out of existence, their light bodies serving as conduits for a plan that defied conventional physics. It had taken the combined intuition of Earth's greatest minds to see what the keepers' perfect logic had missed. The solution wasn't to fight entropy, but to embrace and redirect it. The wave isn't just destroying energy, Dr. Elena Rodriguez had realized 3 days earlier. It's transforming it into something new, something even the dissidents didn't understand. They had discovered that the entropy weapon wasn't just a tool of destruction. It was inadvertently creating a new form of existence, one that bridged the gap between human consciousness and keeper energy. The dissidents, in their attempt to force an ending, had actually discovered the beginning of something unprecedented. Primary transformation matrix online. Dr. Lu Wei called out. Neural patterns holding steady. The chamber hummed with power as the first test began. A small portion of the entropy wave was contained within a quantum field, its destructive force channeled through circuits designed by human intuition and powered by keeper technology. As they watched, the dark energy began to shift, taking on new properties that neither species had seen before. It's working, Dr. James Morrison whispered, watching his atmospheric models predict the wave's behavior. The entropy isn't just being stopped, it's being reborn. Marcus stepped forward, placing his hand on the quantum field generator. He could feel the warmth of the transformed energy, not the cold light of the keepers, nor the biochemical warmth of human life, but something entirely new. Send the signal, he commanded. The message went out across space, reaching the dissidents who had launched the entropy wave. It carried not just data, but something they had learned from humans. A story. The story of how their attempt to force an ending had instead revealed a new beginning. Hours passed as they waited for a response. The wave continued its approach, but now they could see it with new eyes. What had looked like death was actually transformation, waiting to be guided by minds that understood both the precision of eternal existence and the creativity of mortal life. Finally, a response came. The wave began to change its configuration, its purpose shifting from destruction to transformation. The dissidents had understood. They had sought an ending but found instead a way to evolve. Look, Dr. Rodriguez pointed to the viewing screen. Where the wave touched space, it left behind something miraculous. Networks of energy that pulsed with both keeper precision and human chaos, forming structures that could think, feel, and grow in ways neither species had imagined possible. We didn't just save them, Marcus realized. We helped them find what they were really looking for, a way to change, to grow, to experience the uncertainty that gives life its meaning. The keeper who had first greeted them approached, its form now flickering with new colors that reflected human emotion. We sought teachers of death, it said, but instead found guides to a new kind of life. Your wisdom was greater than we knew. Around them, the transformed energy began to take shape, creating spaces where keeper consciousness could experience time in new ways, where the eternal could taste the sweetness of impermanence without being consumed by it. It was a civilization being born, one that carried the legacy of both species. As Marcus watched, he thought of his granddaughter Maya, and the future she had hoped to preserve. She couldn't have known exactly what they would face, but she had understood something fundamental, that the greatest human gift wasn't their knowledge or their technology, but their ability to face the unknown with hope and creativity. "What will you do now?" he asked the keeper. The being's form shifted, adopting an expression that looked almost like a smile. "We will learn to live as you do, embracing each moment because it is finite, creating beauty because it is fleeting, loving deeply because loss gives love its meaning, and we will remember those who taught us how." Dr. Patil approached, her eyes bright with new possibilities. "And us? What becomes of Earth's last teachers?" Marcus looked at his colleagues, these brilliant minds that had spanned 50 millennia to reach this moment. They were still needed, not just as teachers, but as bridges between what humanity had been and what the keepers would become. "We continue teaching," he said simply, "and learning. After all, we're witnessing something unprecedented, the birth of a civilization that understands both the infinite and the finite, the eternal and the fleeting. Our legacy isn't just preserving human wisdom anymore. It's helping shape what comes next." As if in response, the gas giant above cast new colors across the landscape, its light playing through the transformed energy fields that now encircled the planet. It was neither the world they had left behind, nor the one they had awakened to, but something entirely new, a place where mortality and immortality danced together, creating patterns of existence that neither species alone could have imagined. The universe stretched out before them, not ending but transforming, carrying forward the best of what both species had to offer. And in that moment, Marcus understood that this had been the true purpose of Project Legacy all along, not just to preserve what humanity had been, but to help shape what existence itself could become.